YouTube, what's up? I wanted to make this video not as a guide on what you should do because everybody plays in their own way, but to show you what I did to get my gear and generate wealth in Diablo 2. All of these methods require zero magic find, but would require that you're playing online. This would not work in single player because you have to find all the items yourself. This method relies on collecting and trading. I will go over the gear and the build that I used, how I got all my gear, and what items are not affected by magic find at all, which are runes, gems, keys, charms, and bases. Timestamps and links will be in the description below. So first I will go over the gear and the build that I used to generate all this, and then I'll explain how I got each part of the build. So this is my Chain Lightning Frozen Orb build, which is one of my favorite builds to make. So first I'll go over the skill tree here. This is a level 99 character, but obviously you can fudge the points for lower level characters. But for argument's sake, I'm just going to go over the stat points that I have for this build. So 1 point into Frozen Armor, 1 point into all these synergies here, 1 point into Cold Mastery, and then 19 points into Frozen Orb. You can get away with less points into Frozen Orb, or you can max Frozen Orb and then lighten the Charge Bolt if you want. For the Lightning Tree, I've maxed out Charge Bolt, Lightning, Chain Lightning, and Lightning Mastery. 1 point into Teleport, 1 point into Telekinesis, and 1 point into Static Field. And then for the Fire Tree, 1 point into Warmth. And then for general skills, I have the Hydras mapped from the Torch so that I can do Cold, Lightning, and Fire damage, along with physical damage with my Mercenary. And this is the Merc setup that I had kind of early, so I put on some of the gear that I had early on. So this is not using Infinity yet because that I got Infinity later, but so using an Insight, very easy to get. Treachery, another easy rune word to get, and then Tal's Mask for the 10 life leech, which is helping to keep him alive. So this is all very budget sort of mercenary setup. So this is the gear that I used for a long time. So again, this is Chain Lightning Frozen Orb. The reason why I love this build is it can do all areas of the game. It's very strong in Hell, can solo everywhere, and it doesn't require Infinity. Obviously, it's way better with Infinity, and I eventually got Infinity, and it was a killer build for a long time. And I leveled this character up to about 96 or 97 before I switched to Nova in the later stages of leveling this character. So the first one was the Oculus. So I traded for this item early on. So I had found a pole rune, and this was my first trade that I ever made in D2R, and it was probably the best trade. So I traded a pole rune for an Aki. Simple trade, super good, and it's lasted me all the way up until 99. Shaco. Again, I didn't have these facets in there. I just have these facets in there now, but at the time I didn't have the facets. Shaco. I definitely did not farm and magic find a Shaco. I traded for it. What I traded for the Shaco was I had an Eth Thresher, 0 open sockets, that I traded for a Shaco. And Maras. So this is a 30 all-res Maras. This is one that I found, but I've had them before. I've had other versions of Maras. The one that I traded for first was a like 24 all-res Maras. So the idea was that I wanted to just get all the items I needed quickly, and then I would upgrade them later. So I got this for 4 Istrunes, and at the time 4 Istrunes was kind of overpaying, but because I wanted it pretty early, I was able to trade 4 Istrunes for a random Maras. Spirit and a Monarch. I had found the Monarch base in the pits. It was white, no sockets. I used Larzik to socket it to make sure that it got 4 open sockets, and then I put the runes in it, and I rolled a 35 on my first Spirit, which is super lucky. Sandstorm Treks. These are Eth. They're not the ones that I first found, but these are ones that I've traded for many months later. But the first Treks that I had traded for, I traded for a Lem rune, maybe a pull. I think it was a Lem. I think I traded a Lem. So it was just a random Sandstorm Treks. Again, my method was like not looking for perfect gear, just looking for the gear that I needed, and then I would upgrade later. And then early, I went with BK rings because BK rings are good plus the skills. SOJs were obviously way more. This is one that I found later on, but not one that I had. But you can get BK rings relatively cheap if they're the low life stolen per hit. And so for this build, obviously life stolen per hit is not applicable. So you can get like a 3% BK ring. And I traded for these for Ist Mal, sometimes like a Gull rune value. So it was very cheap. So it was like an Ist or 2 Ists or an Ist Mal. You can get a BK ring. So I got 2 BK rings pretty early to just boost up your skill level and your damage. Arachnid's Mesh, I traded for 2 Ist runes. And that was like slightly overpaying. And this was not the one that I traded for. This is one that I've found which had higher enhanced defense. The one that I traded for was very low level, like 90% or something, or 98%. Again, it was a cheap one. You just want to get it in slot early, and then you can upgrade later. And then Mage Fist. These are very easily found. I actually did have to trade for these, and I traded with a buddy that traded me these for, I think it was 2 regular emeralds because he needed them. So again, this was like basically a free item. So these are cheap to get. So this was the build that I used for a long time. Oh, yes, Chains of Honor. So Chains of Honor, this was like maybe the hardest piece that I had to get. And again, I traded for it. So the base, I traded a Lem rune for the Dust Shroud, which was an enhanced 13% enhanced defense superior Dust Shroud, 4 open socket. Guy just found it in cow level and was like, yep, I'll give it to you for a Lem, which was, in my opinion, cheap. I actually wouldn't recommend using a superior base for any of these rune words because the repair costs are insane. I would rather just put it in a regular base. I regret that now. I should have just put it in a regular 4 open socket Dust Shroud. The reason why I went Dust Shroud was because I wanted the lowest strength requirement because I was still sort of low level when I got this. I think it was like in the 80s, 80, 85, something like that is when I got this. So I wanted the low strength requirement to do it. So I put it in a Dust Shroud. But how I got so that I traded a Lem for the base, and then how I got the Burr rune. So I had found the Ist rune and found the rune, and I saved those. How I got the Burr rune. So I had found a 3/20/15 small charm, which I traded relatively early ladder season 0 for a Burr and an And again, this is one of those like items that is kind of niche and like more valuable now or really later in ladder. But early ladder, I was able to get Burr and for it. And that's just because of kind of knowing the values of these items and what they could potentially trade for. And I knew I needed a Burr, and then I knew I needed an rune to make a CTA. So I made I had the base for CTA. I'm pretty sure I found it. And then I had the Ist and the Mal, and I just needed the to make a CTA. So I had a CTA relatively early. This is not one that I made. The first one I made was a 5/4/3 CTA, which serviced me for a very long time until I eventually traded it and upgraded it to this one. So again, you just want to get the items as early as possible just to get you going. And then I had another Spirit. This is a 35. This is definitely not the one that I used. You can roll any Spirit in your offhand just because you just need the +2 to skills. And then these are all lightning skillers with life that I got much later. But when I was running this build, I was just building up regular lightning charms. So plain lightning skillers. Plain lightning skillers were going for about an Ist. I found an rune, and I traded a guy for 6 Ists, and he was like, why do you need so many Ist runes? And I was like, oh, because I want to trade for lightning skillers, and it's a lot easier when you have Ists to trade for the lightning skillers. So I had found a couple plain lightning skillers, and then I traded for probably 6 or 7 lightning skillers before I eventually got more wealthy and had runes to trade for ones with life or found ones with life. So again, you just want to get them in slot. This torch I traded a Burr for. So this is a 1919 torch that I traded a Burr for, but the first torch that I had was a super low level one that I traded for an rune. This 2019-10 Annie is one that I farmed from declone, and again, there's like declones all the time now, but this one I actually got probably around ladder season 1. This was an invite from a friend on an Asia server. So there was like a declone walk, and you follow it on Discord and stuff. And I was like, oh, there's going to be a declone walk coming up. Can you give me an invite? So he invited me to a game. He left the game, and then I was waiting for the declone, and then was able to do the declone, and it was well worth it because it was 2019-10, which is one off of perfect, and I really don't farm Annies all that much because there's only one possible Annie that would be better than this. And then on here, this is actually not the best, but I have all these mana charms. This is left over from my Nova build, but typically down here you would have 20 to life charms. And 20 to life charms, I was trading Lems to get a 20 life. I would find a 20 life. So I was just building up 20 to life charms in here just to kind of boost up my life. And again, most of them were through trade, worth about a Lem or a pull. So that is pretty much how I got this build. Again, I traded for every single piece except for I made the spirit. I traded for all of this other stuff. All of it. So how did I get all these runes? How did I get all these items? Well, runes are not affected by Magic Find at all. Pretty much to find runes, you need to kill a lot of monsters and a lot of monsters fast. So you need clear speed. Players count also helps because it boosts the no drop rates for monsters, and the area level would play a part in what runes you can find. Certain monsters can drop up to certain runes. Countess is a good place to find mid to low level runes. She has a drop table that can drop up to an Ist rune in Hell, and her monster drop table in Hell can drop up to low. And obviously if it's a terrorized zone, she can drop higher runes than that. Cows is another good place to farm runes. Cows has a higher chance to drop runes, and it's a super dense area, so it makes it easier to kill a lot of monsters fast. You can also jump into cow games with other players count to help boost the no drop rate and find more. But keep in mind that when you jump into cow games or you host cow games, you are sort of competing against everybody else in the game for the same sort of drops. Hell cows can drop up to Zod rune. Nightmare cows can drop up to Vex rune, I believe. And obviously if you're in a terrorized Nightmare cow game, it has a higher drop table, maybe up to Ohm or so. One of my other favorite places to farm for runes is Arcane Sanctuary. The ghosts in Arcane Sanctuary have a pretty dense pool. There's a lot of ghosts there, and the ghosts have a higher chance to drop runes. Additionally, at the end of each path or wrong path in the Arcane Sanctuary, there's super chests, and the super chests also have pretty good odds of dropping high runes. Outside of those three spots, your typical good spots for runes is Travancore, Chaos Sanctuary, and pretty much anywhere that has ghosts or specters. As far as runes go, you can either magic find for the unique items and trade those unique items for runes, and then trade the runes for the actual items that you want, or you can farm the runes and just trade for the items that you actually need. There's always two sides of the coin, right? You have the unique item that people want, you want runes for them, or you have the runes that people want and you buy the unique items. Gems is another way to generate wealth relatively early in the game. Gems can be found anywhere in the game, and you can start collecting them from the beginning of normal. And you can use the cube to upgrade the gems to eventually get you to P-gems, and then P-gems can be used to buy low-level uniques, or you can trade them in bulk for runes. For example, I used to trade a lot of perfect amethysts for mals, things like that. You can collect a lot in bulk, so you could collect up to 40 P-gems and trade the 40 P-gems potentially for an Ist. The reason why higher level players would want P-gems in bulk is because they'll do crafting with the amethysts, and then with regular P-gems, they would roll Bale Charms. So a Bale Charm is a grand charm that you can get from Bale, Diablo, or Nilithak. The reason why is it's a item level 95 or higher. And then in terror zones, obviously, if you're farming a terror zone that's higher than level 95, then any grand charm that drops in that area would be high enough level to be considered a Bale Charm. Rolling Bale Charms can get you a plus to skills up to 45 life. So generally players will roll Bale Charms to try and get skillers with different affixes on them to make them higher value. So you can create value that way with just P-gems. So that's the reason why trading P gems early in bulk might be valuable to higher level players. If you didn't know, you can use gem shrines to upgrade your gems that you have in your inventory. So this is a way to upgrade gems potentially faster, because typically you would need 3 of the previous gem to upgrade to the next level gem. So in this case, you can use a gem shrine to just automatically upgrade that single gem you have to the next level. So here's an example of using a gem shrine. If I were to use this gem shrine without anything in my inventory here, I would get a chipped gem of random value. But I'm going to pick up the flawless amethysts, and if I hit the gem shrine, it will give me back a perfect. Gem shrines can be found anywhere in the game, but it's most common to find them in early acts 1 and 2. And that's one way you can upgrade gems. Key farming. I love key farming, and this was my most used method to generate wealth in the game. The places to farm for keys is the Countess in the Tower in Act 1, the Summoner at Arcane Sanctuary in Act 2, and Nilithak at Halls of Pain in Act 5. The Countess will give you a key of Terror, the Summoner will give you a key of Hate, and Nilithak will give you a Destruction key. You want to collect 3 of each key set, or collect 9 of one key and then trade to complete your set. I was selling key sets for IST early ladder season 0. The value of keys will change over time depending on who you're trading with. I was lucky enough to trade with a few torch farmer players, and I was able to farm sometimes 12 keys in an hour. So that was my most used method of generating wealth. I would farm a whole bunch of keys, trade them for IST. Farm a whole bunch of keys, trade for IST. Get a whole bunch of IST and trade for the items that I wanted. So this was a way, again, to generate wealth that has no effect or has no need for Magic Find. The drop rates for keys varies, but it's somewhere in the 1 in 7 or 1 in 12. And again, you can boost your chances of finding keys with player count, but generally, because you're farming keys so fast, you're gonna do it on players 1 online. And you can do a lot of key runs over and over. Charms and bases. So Magic Find has no effect on what base drops in the game. The only thing that affects the base that can drop is the area level or the monster level. For example, you cannot find an Archon plate in Act 1 normal. That base just would not drop there. But once a base drops, that's when it checks your Magic Find to see if it's going to roll a unique, set, rare, magic, or socketed and eth. So if you have 0% Magic Find, your chances of finding socketed and eth bases increases because you would have less chance of finding those unique, set, rare, or magic. Even with 0 Magic Find, you can still find unique and sets and rares and all that stuff. Charms, outside of Geeds or Sunder Charms and Terrorize Zone, will always drop as magic and can always roll good affixes depending on where you find the charm. So again, Magic Find really has no effect on regular charms, whether it's small, large, or grand charm. It's not like having more Magic Find is going to increase your chance of dropping charm. If you're looking for skill charms, you can find skill charms anywhere that the area level is higher than 50. So Act 3 Flare Jungle in Nightmare or higher. 2 great places to farm for charms is Nightmare Cows and Hell Arcane Sanctuary. Cows can drop skill charms in Nightmare and a lot of great small charms. You can get your 3/20/20 small charm in Nightmare Cows. Hell Arcane Sanctuary with the ghosts have a higher chance of dropping grand charms in general. I think it's 1 in 500-ish. Again, another reason why I like farming this area. Cows is also a great place to farm bases. Nightmare Cows or Hell Cows, you can find some really good bases there depending on what base you're looking for. A character that is typically a base farmer is the Javazon, because that build is basically 0 Magic Find and can clear cows very quickly. Base items can actually hold a lot of value because everybody wants a really good base to make their rune words. So if you can find a good base, you can trade the base for some nice runes. I found an Eth0 open socket giant thresher. I used the cube recipe to roll sockets in it, rolled 4 OS, and then I traded that for a low rune, just as an example. So even with little to no Magic Find, you can still find some good, unique, and rare items. It was just never a priority with my playstyle or my method. So these examples are ways that you can generate wealth in the game that requires 0 Magic Find. That's what I did, and that's probably what I would do in the next season. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to do so below. And thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.